March 28, 1945, 4:17 hours. Near the Rhine River, Germany. The night is cold enough to cut through steel. Mud clings to boots. Engines whisper instead of roar. A pale moon hangs over shattered villages, their rooftops broken like old bones. Somewhere in the darkness, artillery murmurs like distant thunder. Inside a command jeep, General George S. Patton stands stiff in his polished helmet, gloved hands resting on a map that flutters in the wind. His breath fogs the air. His eyes don't, they burn. You can almost feel the tension around him. Not fear, not hesitation, but impatience. The kind of impatience that belongs to men who believe history is moving too slowly. Ahead of him lies Nazi Germany. Not the propaganda version, not the cheering parades, not the speeches. The real one, bleeding, collapsing, dangerous even in defeat. Patton looks toward the black horizon and mutters something only his aide can hear. Not a victory cry, not a patriotic line, something colder, something strange, something no reporter would ever print. Patton was the face of Allied fury, loud, ruthless, unstoppable. To the public, he was the general who hated Nazis with every fiber of his being. The man who swore to crush Hitler's empire into dust, but behind closed tents and leather-bound diaries, another Patton existed. A quieter one, a conflicted one, a dangerously honest one. And on this freezing German night, that hidden Patton was wide awake. Earlier that evening, Patton had been alone in his command trailer, oil lamp flickering against steel walls. Outside, tanks idled, radios hissed, men laughed nervously. Inside, Patton opened a small brown journal, his personal diary. The pages were worn, corners bent, ink smudged by war. He dipped his pen and wrote words no one was meant to read. Not politicians, not generals, not America. He wrote about Hitler, not with admiration, not with hatred alone, but with something far more unsettling. Respect mixed with disgust. Patton believed Hitler was insane, but he also believed the German army was brilliant, disciplined, professional, deadly in ways most Americans didn't understand. He once scribbled that fighting the Germans felt different than fighting any other enemy. They are soldiers, Patton wrote privately, not criminals in uniform. They fight with a mind for war, not for chaos. That sentence alone would have ended his career if leaked. Publicly, Patton thundered about destroying Nazis. Privately, he studied them, and sometimes he admired them. You have to understand Patton's world. He wasn't just a commander. He was a warrior historian. Raised on tales of ancient generals, cavalry charges, and battlefield honor, Patton believed war had rules. Brutal, yes, but structured. To him, the German army represented that old-world style of combat: precision, doctrine, and obedience. Not morality, efficiency. In Tunisia, Sicily, France, Patton didn't just beat Germans. He learned them. He memorized their tactics, their formations, their psychology. He once told an officer quietly, over coffee stained with dust, "The Germans are the only ones here who really understand war." Imagine hearing that from America's most aggressive general. Not hatred, recognition. And recognition is dangerous. Because when you recognize your enemy, you stop seeing them as monsters. You start seeing them as mirrors. But Patton's most shocking thoughts weren't about Hitler's madness. They were about Europe itself. In private conversations, Patton believed Nazi Germany wasn't the real long-term enemy. Another power was rising in the shadows: the Soviet Union. While the world focused on Hitler, Patton quietly feared Stalin. He believed that once Germany fell, Europe would not become peaceful. It would become divided, occupied, controlled. In his diary, Patton once wrote something chilling: "We have destroyed the wrong enemy." Think about that. While millions died fighting Nazism, Patton believed history was already shifting toward another war, one America wasn't prepared for. He feared that by crushing Germany completely, the Allies were clearing the path for Soviet dominance, and worse. He thought the German military might one day be needed again, not as Nazis, but as soldiers, against something bigger. Patton never said this on camera, never shouted it in speeches, never allowed reporters near those thoughts, because America didn't need complexity. It needed certainty. It needed heroes. It needed villains. So Patton played the role. He cursed Nazis publicly, threatened them, promised destruction, but inside his mind, war was chess, not morality theater. And chess players don't hate pieces. They study them. Back near the Rhine, a young lieutenant approaches Patton with a folded report. German resistance ahead. SS remnants. Armored pockets refusing surrender. Patton reads silently, then smiles, not happily, but sharply. A predator's smile. He hands the paper back. "Good," he says. They still want to fight. The lieutenant hesitates. "Sir, after Berlin falls." "What then?" Patton pauses. The engines hum. The wind whistles through shattered churches. And for just a second, the mask slips. Patton stares toward Germany, not as a conqueror, but as a man already thinking about the next war. "They don't understand," he says quietly. "This isn't the end of anything." Then he puts his helmet back on. And history keeps moving. But what exactly did Patton believe about Hitler himself? What did he write that terrified even his closest aides? And why would those thoughts later make Washington uneasy about their most aggressive general? Because Patton's hidden opinion of Nazi Germany wasn't simple hatred. It was far more dangerous than that. It was strategy. And it was about to collide with politics. April 11th, 1945, 9:32 hours, near Hammelburg, Germany. Rain falls in thin, icy needles. American tanks crawl through a forest road, their tracks chewing wet earth. Smoke hangs low, trapped between broken pine trees. Somewhere ahead, a prison camp has just been liberated. Patton rides standing in his jeep, binoculars pressed to his eyes. The war is almost over, but Patton looks like a man entering it. You can almost hear the quiet tension in the convoy, soldiers whispering, rifles tight in their hands, unsure what they're about to find. They pass abandoned helmets, crushed bicycles, torn Wehrmacht coats half buried in mud. Then the gates appear. Bent iron, barbed wire, silence. The camp smells like sickness and old smoke. Men step forward, thin, hollow-eyed prisoners in striped uniforms. Some cry, some can't. Some just stare at Patton's shining pistols like they're hallucinating. An aide whispers, "My God." Patton doesn't move at first. He studies the scene like a general studies a battlefield. Then his jaw tightens. For once, the legendary Patton says nothing. Later that afternoon, away from cameras, away from cheering troops, Patton sits alone again with his diary. He writes faster than usual, not gloriously, not heroically, but honestly. What he saw in German camps disturbed him, but what disturbed him more was what Germany had become under Hitler. Patton despised Nazism. That part is real. He believed Hitler turned a professional army into a political weapon, a disciplined nation into a cult. In private notes, Patton wrote that Hitler poisoned a warrior people with theatrical madness. That's how Patton saw it. The Germans in his mind had once been soldiers. Hitler turned them into symbols. And symbols get people killed faster than strategy ever does. Patton never respected Hitler. He considered him a delusional gambler, obsessed with ideology instead of logistics. One night in Sicily, Patton told his staff something shocking over whiskey glasses. Hitler is no general. He's a street preacher with tanks. To Patton, Hitler didn't understand maneuver warfare, supply chains, terrain exploitation. the real mechanics of victory. He believed Germany won early because of its officers, not because of Hitler, and later lost because of Hitler. In Patton's private view, the Nazi leader strangled his own army with ego, pulled divisions for political show, refused tactical withdrawals, sacrificed entire corps just to protect the myth of invincibility. Patton hated that. Not morally, professionally. To Patton, bad generalship was the worst sin in war. But here's where his thoughts became dangerous. Patton didn't believe the German army was evil. He believed Nazism was evil. There's a difference. He separated ideology from skill. In his diary he once wrote, "If we are to fight men forever, it is better they be trained soldiers than fanatics." That sentence alone scared Allied intelligence officers later, because Patton wasn't thinking about revenge. He was thinking about balance of power. As Allied forces pushed deeper into Germany, Patton began meeting captured Wehrmacht officers, colonels, majors, tank commanders with iron crosses still sewn onto their tunics. Most generals treated them like criminals. Patton treated them like chess opponents. He questioned them personally. Where did you position armor? Why did you abandon that ridge? What supply routes failed? Not insults, analysis. Some German officers later admitted Patton listened more carefully than any Allied commander they encountered. He wasn't soft. He was curious, and curiosity in wartime is dangerous, because curiosity changes enemies into assets. One captured German colonel once asked Patton bluntly, through a translator, "Do you hate us, General?" Patton paused, then answered quietly, "I hate stupid war, not soldiers." The room went silent. Even his aides shifted uncomfortably, because that wasn't the American narrative. America's story was simple: Nazis bad, Allies good. Patton's story was complex. War is brutal, but skill survives politics, and complexity scares governments. At night, Patton thought about the Soviets. Every mile he advanced into Germany, Red Army forces were closing from the east. Two giants squeezing the same corpse. Patton didn't trust them. He believed Stalin was playing a longer game than Hitler ever did. In another diary entry, Patton wrote, "We are liberating Europe for someone else to own." He imagined Soviet tanks in Berlin, Prague, Warsaw, not as allies, but as occupiers. And he believed something controversial. Germany, defeated, disciplined, reorganized, might be the only force capable of stopping Soviet expansion one day. Not Nazi Germany. German Germany. A rearmed, controlled, professional force under Western influence. To most Americans, that sounded insane. To Patton, it sounded like history repeating itself. Empires fall. Vacuum follows. Someone fills it. One evening in April, Patton's chief of staff warns him quietly, "Sir, Washington doesn't like how friendly you sound about German officers." Patton smirks. "They don't like thinking," he replies, but even he knows something is changing. His words are being watched, his diary entries whispered about, his conversations monitored. Because while Patton fights Germany on the battlefield, politically, he's drifting off script. The war is almost over. Hitler is trapped in Berlin. Germany is collapsing. But Patton's mind is already crossing into the future. A future where today's enemies might become tomorrow's shield. And that idea? That terrified politicians more than any German panzer ever did. Then, in occupied Germany, Patton makes a decision, a quiet one, a bureaucratic one, but one that will explode into scandal. He begins keeping former Nazi officials in power, not out of sympathy, but strategy. And Washington is about to notice.